So you want to create your future, discover a path worth traveling down, find a career to get excited about. For decades, Career Tech has been training talented, skilled individuals, empowering them to step into a career that fuels not only their life, but the Oklahoma workforce. These individuals are the heartbeat of this state's economy. Individuals just like you. Create your future today at Oklahoma Career Tech.
Welcome, football fans, to the Skordle Pater Pick'em Show. I am your host, Andy Campbell. Looking forward to talking Week 4 Oklahoma high school football with this panel of experts as we start getting into district play. Mark Rodgers and Jacob Diesselhorst here as always, and a special welcome back to Tom Nelson. Tom, our deepest condolences to you and your family on the loss of your father. But we are really glad to have you back on the show. Mark's back has been hurting from carrying all the 8-man games the last few weeks, so he's really glad to have you back, Tom.
So he's like 24 games ahead of me now in the standings.
Maybe an insurmountable lead there for Mark this year. But our guest picker tonight is Coach Mark Harmon. Coach Harmon graduated from Covington, coached football for 29 years in Oklahoma at Sequoia, Tahlequah, Perkins Tryon, and then spent nearly 2 decades as the head coach at Garber. Coach Harmon won back-to-back state titles at Garber and had a record of 125 and 75 in his 18 seasons there. Coach, great to have you on tonight. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Hey, it was Sequoia Claremore, though, by the way.
Yep.
Little shout out to them.
Appreciate that. Sorry,
Garber just went there this last year. They hired him, so it's kind of cool.
Yeah. Sorry for the mistake there, but appreciate
No big deal. It happens all the time.
We're going to discuss our network games. We have 8 of them to discuss tonight, 2 games of the week, and then we will discuss the 4 best out of Skordle network games in the state this week. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to discuss several 8-man games tonight. So let's start it off with District C1 as the undefeated Timberlake Tigers hit the road to take on the Balco Forgan Bulls. Coach Severin's team has been impressive so far this season, while the Bulls are 1-2 as we head into district play. Tom, our 8-man expert, is back. Let's start with you.
Well, I'm a little bit out of the loop the past 3 weeks, but at least I did see Timberlake back in 0 week when they beat Cherokee. They've beaten Cherokee, Ringwood, and Pioneer by a total combined score of 166-24. They've been rolling. Merritt Judd is a stud. Balco Forgan 1-2. They gave a decent Boise City team a game last week, fell 14-8. And like I said, I saw Timberlake back in August when they looked really good against Cherokee. And that's enough for me. I'm going to take the Timberlake Tigers in this one.
Mark.
Well, I got a lot of things to update people on. One, Andy is really not doing a very good job tonight. He did not mention that Mark Harmon was a great quarterback at UCLA, chose the Bruins over the Sooners, and then went on to a great acting career. So that was an oversight. Tommy also forgot to notify you that I was a perfect 12-0 last week. So that was more than carrying the show on my back. But I can't believe when we have a perfect that there's no mention of a perfect slate like there was last week. There was not any big hits to the lines either. A really bad line last week on Piedmont and Norman, which I don't know, for some reason everybody followed Jacob on that. Deer Creek has been backing him up though on some of the homer lines there. So I agree with you completely. You picked up right where you left off, doing a great job. Timberlake gets the win over Balco Forgan in this one.
Mark, your 12-0 record was really ruined by your pick of OU winning by 4 touchdowns over Tennessee. So hard to take you seriously.
That's not true at all. I picked Tennessee to win that game just by 6.
Coach Harmon, let's go to you. Timberlake at Balco Forgan.
Yeah, I think I saw Timberlake play a year or 2 ago. I can't remember. He's got one solid class in there that all those kids are kind of stuck in. I think they're sophomores or juniors maybe. And I think Severin's got a chance to make a run at it again with this class, either this year or next year. And it's got some of the Judds. It's got some of those family names in there that can play some ball. So, yeah, Timberlake for sure on this one.
Jacob.
Yeah, I always have trouble setting lines on 8-man games. And Balco Forgan, I remember a couple seasons ago, was the upset special in 8-man football. They had that quarterback that could just run around and throw it all over the field and make plays. And I have a feeling he's probably not still playing. And Timberlake is makes Class C is the top of Class C season in, season out. They're looking good again this season, sitting pretty at number 3 in the rankings, undefeated. Going on the road to Balco, I got them a 16.5-point favorite, and I have a win of the game, 32-16.
Watch that matchup for free at Skordle app, Skordle.tv, or TimberlakeTigers.tv. Let's go to Class 2A with a big game in Norman on Friday as the undefeated Beggs Demons will take on the 1-2 Community Christian Royals. Beggs has been impressive in 2024, while CCS got its first win of the year 2 weeks ago with a 33-12 win over Cassidy. Mark, give us a preview.
Big game coming up next week when Beggs hosts Davis. That's kind of what could be maybe a semifinal matchup. CCS is doing a nice job in Norman. I think Beggs is going to go on the road and get a victory here. So the Demons have got a shot in their class to make some serious noise. So I'm going to go with Beggs this week.
Nice to see Beggs back after a losing season a year ago. CCS, they're playing a third team that's ranked this week. They've lost to Washington, and then Mount St. Mary's had a week off after beating Cassidy, so they're going to be a little fresher maybe. Beggs had beaten up on a couple of winless teams and beat Henrietta, their only loss last week. Beggs bouncing back, new coach from last year's losing record. I think they're going to get their 4th win on the road and keep the roll going here in 2024.
Coach Harmon.
Yeah, I made a phone call on this one. Coach Bookout, a former Wacomas coach, and my assistant and my son's assistant actually last year is coaching running backs, I believe, down there. And he felt pretty good about it. Thought their speed would be a little bit too much for him to handle. So I'm with Beggs too.
Jacob.
So Beggs has been so impressive this year. They've played a really hard schedule. On paper, bringing Henrietta into town, playing against Verdigris. I think I said that right.
Close.
I see Community Christian as one of those teams that's a lot better than their record. Obviously, they've played a really hard schedule, like Mark said, playing the number 1 team in 2A Washington. Mount St. Mary's another top 10 team. And Cassidy's a good team too, and that was a good win for them last week. And at home this week against Beggs, I think that gives them a chance Friday night. But I do have Beggs a touchdown favorite going into Norman on Friday night, and I see Beggs getting the win 28-20.
2 games down, and our entire panel is taking the same team both games. So let's go to pick'em game number 3. We'll stay in Class 2A as the 1-2 teams square off in Chandler. Sequoia Tahlequah got in the win column last week with a 36-6 win over Keys. Chandler Lions fell to Clinton 21-0 last week after a 21-17 win over 3A Lone Grove. Mark, we'll start with you again.
Verdigris is the French pronunciation, and I think the correct pronunciation, verdigris, is what Grandpa says. So either is acceptable. I was distressed to learn that our own friend Lugnut, Tony Wilson, thought that the game between Chandler and Clinton was thrown by the referees at the Tornado Bowl last week. I spent 5 minutes listening to him, and he's got a new website concept that he wants to come up with where you pay $5, you send in a bad call, and then a group of referees tries to explain whether or not it's right. So I wish him the best of luck on that business venture. So saying all that, the Lions have faced a pretty tough non-district schedule. Going to Clinton is a tough task. They played Stroud, who's the number 1 team in their class, and then Lone Grove gave them a good game. Sequoia Tahlequah is much better this year. They're going to be a team that I think fights to make the playoffs and potentially have a home game. And this is a big battle in the right to do that. But I'm going to go with Chandler, the home team here.
Tell Lugnut to contact the AMG team with Adam Diesselhorst to get that website created for him. Tom Nelson, let's go to you. Sequoia Tahlequah at Chandler.
Yeah, both these teams, 1 and 2, played pretty tough schedules. Both these teams are going to be in that top 4 of District 4 and 2A1. So this is going to be a very competitive ball game. I wouldn't be surprised if we have some different picks on this one. I'm going with the home team. I'll take Chandler in a close one.
Coach Harmon.
The last I heard of Sequoia Tahlequah was when Bear Scott, Coach Scott's son. I don't know if any of y'all remember him. I think I'm aging myself here. Coach Scott was a legendary coach at Bristow way back in there. And Bear coached Sequoia Tahlequah, and they were really good there for a few years. So I'm going to take Sequoia Tahlequah.
Jacob.
Yeah, upset special there. I like that. Yeah, Sequoia Tahlequah, another team that's played, a really hard non-conference schedule. Went and played Pine Grove, Arkansas on the road in their first game of the season. That was a bad decision. Got kind of blown out on the road there, but I mean, obviously got some toughness out of that game, and then lost a tight one to Eufaula in overtime the next week, and then bounced back last week with a big win at home against Keys. But I think going on the road at Chandler, there's a lot of tradition in Chandler. Chandler's year in, year out a playoff team. They too have played a really hard schedule. 3 very good teams they've played. Their 2 losses are, against Stroud and Clinton. Nothing to hold their heads about. Those are tough teams, tough games. And I think home field will be the difference here. I got Chandler a 10-point favorite, and I have them winning the game 28-20.
ChandlerLions.tv for that matchup. Let's go to Class or District 4A2 is the undefeated defending champs Blanchard Lions travel to Hara to take on the 2-1 Panthers. Hara started the year 2-0 but fell at Seminole 16-6 last week. Mark, does Blanchard continue on with their undefeated season?
We were there for that game on Friday night. Adam and I were. We had a great time. I was incredibly impressed with the Seminole game night presentation. They've been doing that for a long time, and it's a small community that may have seen some better days. But as far as enthusiasm for high school sports goes, it was just off the charts. Coach Snyder showed us a great time. Coach Harmon, you'll like this. They had some stuff up in the locker room of some of the years that Seminole was good in the 50s. And then there was an article about Seminole winning the 1980 state championship when I believe they played in the same district, and had some quotes from Bill Scott in there when he was at Bristow. Seminole had lost to them in the regular season, but then won the state championship against Bixby at the time. Anyway, credit to Seminole for cheer, palm, band, all of that stuff that they did, and it was a great environment. Hara turned the ball over in that game 4 times. I think they've got a really nice foundation. We've got some good players on defense that we saw, but I think that they're stepping up in a class here, taking on Blanchard, who's one of 4 teams, I think, in Class 4A that are really, really good, that will be in the mix for a state championship, along with Tuttle, Wagner, and Elgin. So I'm going to go with Blanchard, the defending champs here, over Hara. And I think the Panthers, ultimately, it comes down to either Hara or Ardmore in that district for the final playoff spot.
Yeah, Blanchard's good. They stepped up in class and beat Guthrie last week 33-24. Brayson Carter in the game, 3 touchdowns on the offensive side, got it done defensively as well. Hara lost by 10 last week, scored 6 points against Seminole, as Mark said. Keep an eye on senior running back Titus Johnson. He's averaging 94 yards rushing a game. They're going to have to get him going if they want to hang with Blanchard. I don't think they will. I like Blanchard in this one.
Coach Harmon.
I had to call my son on this one. Trenton said to go with Blanchard, so that's what we're going with.
Fair enough. Let's go to Jacob Diesselhorst.
Yeah, Blanchard's doing something interesting this season. They've got 2 quarterbacks. They're playing 2 different quarterbacks. Both of them are sophomores. Both kids have played well. The Smith kid seems to be getting a few more snaps. I think he's a little better throwing the ball, but they have a lot of talent running the football too. And then that's where they're senior laden with the running backs, Fugit, McIntyre, Conway, all those kids. Really good at averaging 4 or 5 yards, 6 yards a pop. That's what Blanchard does. Is they win the game, on the line of scrimmage. And then Carter, the wide receiver, I think he's their big play. He's been the difference in several of the games thus far. I just really like what Blanchard does on both sides of the ball. I think that win against Guthrie last week and really proves just how formidable Blanchard is. Now going on the road to Hara, that is not an easy game. The fact that Hara stuck with Seminole on the road at Seminole last week shows that Hara has got a good team this season. With that said, I got Blanchard a 11-point favorite on the road at Hara, and I have them winning the game 31-20.
Entire panel taking Blanchard. Let's go to pick'em game number 5 in District A5. The Southwest Covenant Patriots opened up a new stadium and a new field last week and defeated Kanawha 38-22. Patriots put their undefeated record on the line this week against the 2-1 Texoma Goodwell Red Devils. Texoma has a week 0 win over Merritt before splitting games against Groover and Spearman, both Texas schools. Tom Nelson, let's go with you.
Yeah, Southwest Covenant stepping up to play 11-man for the first time this year. Now, I'm not a huge proponent. I'm not a huge fan of all the new classes, but the one thing I do like is like in A2 and 2A2 and B2, some of those smaller schools in those classes, it's going to be very fun to see who makes those deep playoff runs and who's got a chance to play for a gold ball. And Southwest Covenant jumps into the top 10 in the state in A2, 3-0 the record, taking on a Texoma team that's played Texas schools in 2 out of 3. They're 2-1 on the season. Texoma, a pretty young team. They're probably a year or two away. You look at Southwest Covenant, they've beaten the Patriots, the OKC Patriots, Elmore City Purnell, Kanawha, mentioned that new stadium, turf stadium, beautiful looking. And they have a quarterback named Nate Gerber who has turned himself into a pretty good dual threat quarterback. He leads the Patriots in passing and rushing. I think the Patriots are going to look good on that new turf, so I'll take Covenant.
Mark Rodgers.
We better prepare the Philadelphia guys for a lot of money coming in on Blanchard at the 11 number right there. I think that one could get up to 15 or 16 pretty quickly. And then secondly, anybody got the nickname for Spearman? Anyone?
Oh, I looked at the roster, but I can't remember.
It's the Spearman Lynx, which is a pretty
Yes,
good name.
Lynx.
It's not no S in that. It ends with an X. One of the rare high school nicknames that are that way. Long bus ride for Texoma. Long bus rides usually are difficult for high school football teams, but I'm going to go with Texoma and this one. Those teams in the Texas Panhandle, Spearman is really good traditionally. The Lynx are agile, fierce, aggressive, tough, and Texoma was able to handle them. So I think that the Red Devils get the win here.
And the thing is, Mark, is those teams in the Panhandle, they're used to driving long, long ways for ball games. So I don't think it's going to affect them. So I like your pick, even though I picked against you. I like that pick.
Coach Harmon.
I had to look this one up, send a kid down to the library to find an annual or a yearbook on it. We played Southwest Covenant in 2007 on a park field. I think there wasn't a bathroom, it was just, they had this dude called Dan Bailey. He turned out pretty good later on. He was running receiver then. We beat them 80-50 and could not get out of that place. I mean, we just touchdown. One of the craziest games I've ever been involved in. But yeah, out of respect for Dan and Southwest Covenant, I'll pick them and go with them. Fun memory that night.
Something I'll throw in there too. This may be one of the few games where the team bus goes through a different state to get to the ball game, because I'm guessing that they're going to go south down to I-40 and go to Yukon. So that doesn't happen very much.
Coach Harmon taking the Patriots. Coach Jacob Diesselhorst.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be an interesting game. Southwest Covenant, they feel like a bigger school than Texoma when you look at it on paper, just with like facilities, those new shiny uniforms they have. This is a kind of a battle of styles here. You got kind of an old school Oklahoma Panhandle football tradition rich school against a newer charter school. Southwest Covenant though has been impressive this season in all 3 of their victories. But I have to agree with Mark on this one. I think Texoma, going on the road and playing those Texas teams, especially Groover, that team is, I think, one of the better teams in their class in Texas. Had to instill some toughness in Texoma. I think they're going to bring that level of toughness to the field in Southwest Covenant. I have Texoma a 4.5-point favorite going into Southwest Covenant on the road. And I think Texoma is going to come away with a victory, although I think it's going to be a tight game, 34-30.
Hey, 2 Skordle schools in that matchup, Southwest Covenant being a new Skordle school. So we welcome them to Skordle, and be sure to watch that matchup on Skordle.tv. The Kingfisher Yellow Jackets got into the win column a week ago with a 35-6 win over Bridge Creek. Kingfisher looks to make it 2 in a row this week at Pauls Valley in a District 3A1 matchup. Pauls Valley Panthers 3-0 after wins over Lindsay, Davis, and Weatherford. Mark Rodgers.
I got to give Dan Bailey a shout out. That's a great call by Coach Harmon. He the all-time leader in field goals for the Dallas Cowboys, and he scored 1,130 points in the NFL. Emmitt Smith scored 1,052. So he's up there on all-time leading scores in the NFL, probably the most of anybody from Oklahoma Preps ranks. All right, back to we got Pauls Valley and Kingfisher here. Pauls Valley is really good this year. They've got Caden Knighton, who transferred in from Wynnewood. He's a 600-meter guy that's about 210 pounds right now, that is committed to Baylor. And, man, Baylor would be lucky to keep him, because I think that he should have some more recruiting offers coming in. So it's a senior-oriented team. There's not a whole lot of depth there in Pauls Valley. I know Jet Birdwell had a really good game last week for Kingfisher against Bridge Creek. In this district, you got tough games every week. There's just going to be battles out there. So Kingfisher has faced a really good non-district schedule with both Weatherford and Clinton on there. But if you go by the transitive property, Pauls Valley beat Weatherford. Weatherford beat Kingfisher. So I got the transitive property holding true here. Maybe that's part of Jake's scoring, his line formula that is so mysterious that we're all trying to figure out. But I'm going to go with the Pauls Valley Panthers.
Kingfisher at Pauls Valley. Tom, let's go to you.
Yeah, Pauls Valley's pretty well-rounded. They held Weatherford to 57 yards rushing last week. Caden Knighton, 170 yards rushing and 86 yards receiving. So I tell you what, he's definitely a weapon. Kingfisher's better than it looks with the 1-2 record, the losses to Weatherford and Clinton. They got some confidence with the big win over Bridge Creek last week. But Kingfisher improved, but they don't have enough for Pauls Valley this week, and I'm going to go Pauls Valley. I'm impressed by what they're doing so far.
Coach Harmon.
I always like Kingfisher. They're kind of close to home and have done a great job down there for years. But I did a little research on this and talked to my son Trenton again, and I agree with you guys. I think Pauls Valley is just too much.
Jacob.
Yeah, I'm sitting here watching some of the Caden Knighton's highlights. He looks like a man among boys out there on the field. Definitely D1 talent. Again, I'm not sure how some of these kids that, end up slipping out of Oklahoma. I mentioned one of those last week. We're talking about Grady Adamson. I'm still not sure why. For example, OSU, for example, and why are people not being more critical of Gundy's decision to bench their senior starting quarterback who led them to 5 comeback victories last season in the second half when they were down by a score at halftime? I'm still a little, befuddled by that decision by Gundy. I got off track there, though. With that said, Knighton, he's the difference. He's a difference maker. They had a play last week. They're on the 1-yard line. Quarterback rolls back in the end zone, drops one off in the end zone to him, and he ends up making it into a 57-yard, broken play, basically, into a huge run. He's a highlight. He's a human highlight reel. He's probably the best player in Class 3A, other than we get to the Lincoln Christians of the world and the Heritage Halls of the world. But that's what Pauls Valley's looking ahead to, I think. Kingfisher is going to be in this game. They're going to show up. These teams do have a common opponent, Weatherford. Kingfisher start off the season with a loss to Weatherford. Pauls Valley toughed out a victory over Weatherford last week. I got Pauls Valley a 14-point favorite at home, and I see them winning this game 28-14.
You can watch this game for free on kingfishersports.tv. I was going to say mute the volume so you don't have to listen to Michael Swisher, but I am told he will not be on the call. He will be in Auburn, Alabama on Friday night. So
Auburn grad, right?
I guess you don't have to mute the volume. He's an Auburn grad.
I'll be in Auburn also, and I will not be asking Michael Swisher where he's going to eat, because that guy doesn't know anything about food, for sure.
Fair point. I'm told Michael Swisher is an OU fan, Auburn grad. So Mark, you may have to investigate, see what clothes he's wearing, see who he's representing down in Auburn, Alabama.
You should just wear defense clothes. That's what you should wear.
Yeah, I could see him wearing an OU jersey over an Auburn jersey, and just in case, see how Hawkins does on the road. But he has that Auburn jersey on underneath just in case.
In our business and at our firm, it's all about preparation, preparation, preparation. We are advocates for our client. We speak for them. So as a part of that advocacy, it involves hiring the best experts. It's doing the legal research. It's doing the medical research. That is advocacy behind the scenes. It's not just the bells and whistles in front of the jury.
Let's talk about our first Skordle game of the week, as the A7 district foes will square off in Wewoka. The Central Salisaw Tigers, 1-2, will travel to Wewoka, who is looking for its first win of the season. Mark, give us the details on this matchup and this first Skordle game of the week.
Well, props to Wewoka, who does a great job on Skordle. They have students that do pre-games and a lot of analysis, and that's what it's all about, getting everybody kind of involved in potential careers and making a big deal out of football games that go on in high school. So love those guys. But I think this one is going to go to the Tigers of Central Salisaw, who were very highly ranked in the preseason and dropped a couple of games, but got back on the right track last week by beating Roland in one of those Sequoia County rivalries. So Wewoka's trying to get it put together, but I'm going to go with the Central Salisaw Tigers.
Shout out to that Wewoka crew. Cole Ward, play-by-play, Linnell Alexander on color commentator, Thomas Hammond, producer, Evan Culberson, student cameraman. They do a great job, as Mark referenced earlier. Tom Nelson, let's go to you, Central Salisaw at Wewoka.
Well, Mark brings up the great staff, the great broadcast at Wewoka, and I bet he would agree with me on this. I would have killed to have had that kind of opportunity back when I was in high school to do all the play-by-play and the video back in the dark ages of the 1980s. But I guess things worked out okay. I'm here, but that would have been a blast to have that opportunity back in the day. Other than that, it might be a long night for Wewoka. They're 0-3. They've been on the wrong end of 3 blowouts to Conawa, Holdenville, and Velma Alma. Central's going to look for a second win in a row after that 0-2 start. They beat Roland last week, 36-13. Now, Central, great year a year ago, 12-1. I guarantee you they were not happy with that 0-2 start, and I think they're going to get back to 500 with an exclamation point. I think it'll be Central big in this one.
Coach Harmon.
This is a true coin toss for me. I guess too early in the year and not a big enough high school fan to have enough info on this one. But I did flip a coin, and we did come up with Central Salisaw, though.
Jacob Diesselhorst, go to you.
You know, you raised a good point. You know, how cool would it have been to have Skordle available, you know, back in the good old days. And, you know, the schools like Wewoka, they're taking advantage of what Skordle offers schools, especially when they involve the students like this. This was really what it's all about. That's what Skordle's built for, is to get, you know, the schools involved, the communities involved with their teams, and, you know, and the programs that have been Skordle, you know, from the beginning, you know, and seeing Wewoka's young crew do it every week is fun to watch. But they better come up with some magic pregame in this one. Because I think that they're, you know, Wewoka's a few yards behind Central Salisaw when it comes to talent this season, and both sides of the ball. I got Central Salisaw a 28-point favorite going into Wewoka. I think Wewoka's going to have their best game of the season. I think they are gonna play well at home, but I just think in the end, Central Salisaw is going to wear them down. I see him winning this game 42-20.
All right, and now our last network game. It's our second Skordle game of the week, a matchup of 2 undefeated teams in Class B, as the Garber Wolverines take the long bus ride to Covington to take on the Cub Dug Wildcats. Wildcats won this matchup 38-18 a year ago. Tom Nelson, give us a preview on this great rivalry game.
Yeah, I'll give you a preview. I'm not going to pick it because I like getting cookies from the home team and not having my tires slit by the road team. So I'm just going to go ahead and break down some information I've pulled out over the last couple of days as I prepare for the broadcast. And going to be a great matchup in this great war on 74. I think there's like 3 or 4 wars on 74, and this is one of them. These towns are 5 or 6 miles apart. They're in eastern Garfield County. Garber's number 3 in B1 with a 4-0 record. Covington Douglas is 3-0. They're ranked number 3 in B2. Garber's rolled over. Not great competition, but have looking pretty good. And I want to talk about some of these guys for Garber. Carson Bishop, 323 rushing yards. He didn't play very much because they've been blowing people out. But against Cherokee, he had 323 rushing yards on 9 carries against Cherokee, 36 yards per carry. That's pretty impressive. And he's got almost 700 yards rushing and 11 touchdowns. He's had a great career. A lot of these guys for Garber have been playing since their freshman year, and he's racked up almost 3,400 yards and has scored 55 touchdowns in his career. Also, their quarterback, Brett Howery, he's been starting since the beginning of his freshman year as well. 8 of their 9 seniors have either started or been in that rotation since their freshman year. So a lot of experience, and it's really setting up well for them here in these kids' senior years. Now, Covington Douglas, they've got 3 blowout wins over teams that are a combined 1-8. So I think they're ready for a test as well. We'll keep our eye on Ford Smith. 79% pass completions for 212 yards per game through the air, 10 touchdowns and no picks. They got 4 receivers with over 7 receptions this season, so he spreads it around a little bit. This is an interesting series. Garber leads the series 12-10 when you go back to 2000, but Covington Douglas has won the last 2, and they won 5 of 6 in this series. So I'm really hoping. I love a good 8-man game. I'm hoping there's some offense in this one. I'd love to see 42-40 or something like that. I haven't done a game since August, so I'm ready to get back into it.
Looking forward to your broadcast on Friday, Tom. Mark Rodgers, go to you.
Well, I was trying to ascertain who Tom was picking in that game and listening very intently, and I couldn't. There was no tell there at all. But I got to say that's an incredible prima donna move. The next thing we know, like Kirk Herbstreit, he's going to be bringing a dog to the game and expecting everybody to fawn over it.
Well, I could go last though and let you guys make your picks, and then I'll pick the other team like Kirk Herbstreit does on
well, this is a no-brainer for me because in 2022 I picked Garber to knock off Covington, and it is the worst pick that I've ever made in the history of predictions. And I know I've made some bad ones before because that ended up 52-8 in favor of Covington. So I'm on a ban from picking Garber in this game. They're much, much better this year. They are experienced. And they're going to make some noise in Class B1, but Covington with the win in the war on 74.
Coach Harmon, you taking the Wildcats also?
How do I get off this thing? I just leave now. Heck no, I'm not. I was trying to figure, you said 5 out of the last 6. I was trying to figure out when the last game I coached there was. So I was trying to figure out that I know which one it was, but I'm not going to say anything. But they're both top 3 teams, I think, in both classes. They're both fairly loaded. I think talent-wise, I don't want to put any cursor on anybody or anything, but I think we are very loaded at Garber this year. We don't have any weak spots. We're a contender for it. I literally believe that. I thought maybe Dewar might have been a little bit outreached for the rest of us, but after the Walika game and Walika picked them off, I think Dewar maybe is kind of like the us and Laverne. Ford Smith's an excellent quarterback, excellent 8-man quarterback. They've got another Thayer running around catching the ball. The Pearson kid in the backfield. They've got to move in a friend of mine's grandson, Wyatt. I think Farthing is his name. He's got a chance to go play some ball. Big kid. But Garber's loaded, and these kids have played for a long time. I had them all in class when they were freshmen. I watched them mature, watch them grow. This Carson Bishop kid is one of the best running backs we've had at Garber. He's a big kid. He's about 6 foot, probably weighs 190, 195, can run. And his cousin, Mark Bishop, and Domingo Ramirez, and then we've got the Coy son on the line, and Jack Weibling on the line, and a Smith kid on the line, and the Blazer kid's a 6'2", 180 linebacker in there for us. I mean, it's as loaded a team as we've had in a long time, and they're gelling really, really well together. And they've had a great weight room season. So I'm just really high on them. I really am. And like I said, I think they've got a chance to make a run for it, a legit chance. And I'm not going to give Brian any bulletin board material. I would love to. My son's going to call me a coward for not. He's a little bit different than me though. So, but no, I cut myself the other day out in the corral, and it puddled up underneath me, and that blood was maroon and gray. So that's what we're going with, and I'll take them by 14 too.
Well, if it's 52-8, I'm never picking that game again. If Garber wins this year 52-8, I'll just go Tom. I'm not going to pick.
Coach, real quick, I want to ask you about the rivalry, the Covington Douglas Garber rivalry, because you've been in the middle of it for so long. The closeness breeds contempt, I would assume.
Yeah, it was always, back when Jesse was coaching, he wouldn't play Garber. He just, or at least that's what they said. And which I don't blame him. Garber was really loaded back then too. And when I got there, we kind of got it going, and it just kind of grew into that. And there's only been a few years since then that we haven't played. You were talking about the long bus ride and the 7 miles. I think it's actually 9. One year I felt like I would never do this again. I felt like we needed a little edge, and we loaded up, or we stretched and at Garber, and got there at I think game started at 7:30 then, and we whip into town at 7:25 fully padded and get off the bus and run out on the field. So it's a fun game. It always focused you, especially when we weren't in district. I didn't like it when we were district matchups because it was just made it too much. But when we were, when we could play it that first game or first few games, it was a great way to keep the kids focused, during 2 days and get some good work in, because they were all, really involved in it. So it's been a fun rivalry. It really has been.
I love that psychological edge right there. Bring them off the bus 5 minutes early. Let's go.
Yeah. Hey, I was young and dumb then, I think. So.
Mark, you need to change your pick on this one after Coach's speech there, or you staying with Cub Dog?
Well, I was Team Garber in 2022 and suffered a 44-point loss. So no, I'm going with Cub Dog here. But I do think that Coach Harmon is right. This is a team that I think can compete for the state championship this year, and a class that's going to be really fun to watch.
Jacob Diesselhorst, going to you Garber at Cub Dog.
Yeah, I mean, both these teams have blasted their way to undefeated, seasons right now in this head-to-head matchup, in this rivalry game. It's going to be a lot of fun. This game's going to be a lot of fun. Covington Douglas, they just like to line up and just run the ball, high formation, run the football, single back, run the football, pound the ball. And they've had their way doing that against all their opponents this season, and then making plays on defense too. Against, I think, Ringwood last week, they had 3 interceptions. I think they took one back for a touchdown, but I just don't think they're going to be able to do that against Garber. I think Garber man-to-man matches up with them. I think Mark was just a little bit ahead of himself 2 years ago when he picked Garber, because these kids that he was picking that season were freshmen and sophomores then. Well, those kids are juniors and seniors now. I think this is Garber's season when it comes to this matchup. I have Covington Douglas, a 4-point favorite at home in this game. But I think Garber's going to come in a high-scoring game. They're going to make just enough plays to win this game, 48-45.
If I remember right, when Mark made that pick, I'm thinking the Howry kid was hurt and didn't play that game, the quarterback, and I think that was a big part of it, which we didn't know going in. So we'll give you a little bit of relief on that, but he's going to play hopefully on Friday night. I think this will be fun. So
again, 2 Skordle schools facing off here on Friday night in our Skordle game of the week. Tom Nelson, Adam Diesselhorst on the call. I have to give a shout out to Coach Brian Smith at Covington Douglas. He came on this show last year after that tough loss against Velma, and did a great job. So we appreciate Coach Smith as well.
Definitely.
All right, let's go to quickly discuss our 4 non-Skordle network games in the state of Oklahoma this week. So you will not be able to watch these matchups on Skordle.tv, but again, these will be great matchups. The first one really needs no introduction. Jinx at Bixby. Mark Rodgers.
Man, Class 6A Division I has been a little difficult to predict this year. Owasso is undefeated. I like Jinx to beat Union. That didn't happen. This is, I think, a tough game. Jinx has got plenty of potential. They're loaded. Bixby, surprised that they lost in the first week of the season, but I'm going to go with Bixby here. I think Bixby still has a lot to say about defending their state championship. They don't lose hardly at all. They've won 76 out of the last 78 games. So I'm going to go with Bixby.
I was prepping for this pick. I was at the game looking at the history, the series between these two teams, and it really just tells you the rise of the Bixby Spartans. Jenks in this series has won 46 of 65 over the years, dating back to the 40s. They had a 26-game winning streak in this series, but since then, Bixby's won 7 of the last 9 in this series, and I think Bixby will get it done again.
Coach Harmon, I know this is a few classes above your comfort zone, but Jinx.
It is. But I know who Jinx and Bigsby are.
Fair enough.
And I was aware of that first game of the year too. I think Bigsby, I don't want to say they got surprised a little bit. I don't think that, because I think Owasso's got, from what I understand, one heck of a wide receiver up there, and a good club. And those 4 or 5 schools over east have been battling for years now. But I think Bigsby's getting going again and rolling in, and I think they'll be fine, and I think they'll get Jinx this week.
Jacob Diesselhorst, Jinx at Bixby.
Yeah, it's, I remember when Bixby beat Jinx. I think, what you're talking about there, that when they turned the corner, their program, that season they beat Jinx, I think it was, 4 or 5 years ago, is really when Bixby turned the corner and became the dominant.
Straight. I think 28 straight by Jinx.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And since then, Bixby's won, 7 out of 9, and Bixby now is, considered to be the best program in the state, the top program. Jinx and Union, that game last week, I think a lot of us expected it to be, action packed, and end up being kind of a dud, kind of a defensive battle. Neither offense could get anything going. It was a field goal fest. It was like an NFL game 2 weeks ago. And Union won 9-3. I like Jinx. Jinx is a tough team to play, a tough team to beat, but I just think Bixby, got a chip on their shoulder getting that loss early in the season, game 1, week 0 against Owasso. And so I got Bixby a 13-point favorite over Jinx at home. I don't know if Jinx has ever been a 13-point dog in football, but they are this week, at least according to my formula. And I see Bixby winning this game 31-21.
I will have... Sorry, but how do you choose? I will have... the old-fashioned banana split sends your taste buds to heaven. But the strawberry shortcake sundae tastes like summer in a dish. Then there's the molten lava cake sundae. Oh, but the banana fudge sundae, I'm drooling.
Or you could get all 4.
Let's do that.
Come enjoy your favorite classic sundae at Brahms.
All right, let's move on to our second matchup, Choctaw at Piedmont. Mark?
Choctaw faced Bixby last week. That was a tough game for them. They did score some points. Piedmont, this is definitely a clash of styles. Choctaw is really going to want to spread it out and throw the ball down the field. And Piedmont's going to want to ground it out and play a slower game. I think that, to me, there's a clear separation between 3 teams in this class. It's Choctaw, Stillwater, and Muskogee. I think Sand Springs is right there, maybe next, and then it drops down to Piedmont. So I'm going to go with Choctaw in this one. I think it's the first matchup between these teams ever.
I'm going to go Oppo on this one. I picked Piedmont as my dark horse in 6A2 back in that preseason show, which seems like it happened a year ago. So I'm going to go with Piedmont. Let's see if they can pull this off.
Coach Harmon.
Well, I'm looking at my cheat sheet here that I went through, and I've got Piedmont too, but I'm not very proud of it right now. I'm kind of, no offense, Tom, but Mark kind of talked me out of it, but I'll go ahead and stay with them. So we'll flip a coin and go with Piedmont.
I don't know what happened with all the Piedmont money coming in. There must be a lot of influence. Last week, you guys all took them to beat Norman. It was 41-14. I mean, Jeff Hall, great coach, great system. That's tough. But, man, they're stepping up a big class here, going up against a program that's, to me, is really been good in the last 4 or 5 years. And Cash Williams is a heck of a player. They've got some other really good skill players there, too. So, if Piedmont wins this game, then I stand corrected. I mean, and they're absolutely in the mix to try to win this class.
Take a resource.
Choctaw's played this wild schedule. They played a Lubbock, Texas team. They went up to, Kansas and played a team and lost 66-44.
That's the Kansas. That's the Kansas 7A state champion, Gardner Edgerton.
Yeah.
They beat Derby last year in the final, so that's not a bad loss for them.
Yeah,
at all.
well, that's what I'm saying is Choctaw has challenged itself, and then come back to Oklahoma and play Bixby before they start 6A2 play. I think that's an impressive way to prepare your team for Oklahoma competition, and when it gets down to when the weather starts getting cooler and start having hailstorms out of the blue like we did today. And I think there's going to be some roof guys texting people tonight. If you haven't already got 4 texts from everybody. I got Choctaw an 8.5-point favorite going into Piedmont. And I just think Choctaw, Piedmont's going to want to try to slow this game down, but I just think Choctaw's got too much offense. I don't think Piedmont can score with them. I think it'll be an interesting game, but I think Choctaw ends up pulling away 38-28.
2 more games left. Let's start with Del City at Collinsville. Mark.
Del City suffered a pretty tough loss opening week of the season to Edmond, and they are replacing quite a bit of players from last year's team that was in the same class as Carl Albert, which, wow, what a win that they had last week against Stillwater. This is a tough game. Collinsville has an injury at quarterback right now, so they are starting to back up at that position. Still very good and still a little bit young. This is, to me, I would be surprised if this game was outside the spread of a field goal either way. So I'm going to go with Del City on the road to get the win over Collinsville.
I am going to say that any misses I get this week, that I've been out of the loop for the past 3 weeks. So don't forget that. So if I go 500 this week, I've got an excuse. But I think Mark and I are going to agree on this one. Collinsville averages 45 points a game. Del City's given up a total of 6 points in their last 2 games. In this case, I think defense wins. I'm going Del City.
Tom can't go 500 unless he makes a pick on the Covington-Garber game. It will not be 500.
That's true. That's true.
Coach Harmon, let's go to you.
Del City. I'm going to go with Del City also.
Jacob.
See, Mark's always got that inside info. Like Mark, first of all, he was right about the line. I had this game of pick'em. And I was not aware. I knew Collinsville's QB went out of the game, but I wasn't sure what his status was. But now hearing that he's not healthy and that they're going to be, although the kid did play well last week. The kid that came in, I'm trying to think of his last name. He did play really well and led them to a road win over Bartlesville, which is a really good win for Collinsville. And I do think these are 2 of the best 5 teams in Class 5A. Del City kind of got their clock clean the first week of the season going to Edmond Memorial. I think that was kind of a wake-up call for them because I see what they've done in the 2 weeks since then. What they did to Midwest City last week on the road is, now of course that's a rivalry game, but that's very impressive. You look up a class, and Piedmont played Midwest City and won 13-0. Well, Del City beat them 62-6. I just think Del City is got it going now. I do have this game of pick'em, but I also think I'm going to go with Del City as well. I think Del City is going to roll into Collinsville this weekend and on Friday night and come away with a victory in a very close game, 35-28.
That Del City beating of Midwest City was so bad that Ray Gundy made Mike and Kale do gassers this week. It was embarrassment to the school, so they had to suffer the price.
All right, guys, our last matchup, Sulphur at Perkins Tryon. Mark, kick us off.
Sulphur, Adam and I were watching that first half score roll in against Cash last week, which is they're not a terrible team. Sulphur is playing up in class against the Bulldogs. It was 45-0 at half. Sulphur's really good, and this Class 3A is going to be fun to watch this year between Sulphur, Heritage Hall, and Lincoln. They had a good game already where Lincoln came from behind and found a way to win at Heritage Hall. So Pauls Valley is another team in that class that, again, is trying to make the step up. And we all know that there's a huge private school, public school issue going on in Class 3A. That's kind of the battlegrounds for that whole debate. The Sulphur team is a legit state championship contender. Perkins is good. They've got a really good program that plays tough physical football, but they're going to have a hard time competing with Sulphur. I like the Bulldogs in this one over the Demons.
Yeah, Sulphur is loaded with talent. Yeah, that double overtime loss to Washington back in the opener showed that. Nothing wrong with that loss. They've blown out Davis and Cash since. They're going to get a great test at Perkins, a couple of 2-1 teams with good losses, but I like Sulphur in this one.
Coach Harmon.
Spent 4 years at Perkins trying. It was my first head coaching job. Boy, barely got out there, I think, 500. I wasn't a very good coach then. Probably never was. Just a better bus driver when the kids were good. But Lance Hoggett is still – he's there, was one of my assistants. And I think his son, Bryce, is calling the offense. So I'll go with the PT Demons.
All right. Jacob Diesselhorst.
Yeah. So, I disrespected Sulphur a few weeks ago, and Robert let me have it, on the group text.
Still
Man,
not over
and no, and I think that I maybe like there might be my face might be on a dartboard in the Sulphur locker room right now. I cannot underestimate this team again, especially after what they did to Davis, coming off that great game against Washington and then blowing out Cash last week. But Perkins has a home field advantage. Like, that is a hard place to go in and win on a Friday night, especially when there's a little bite in the air, as the season's kind of changed. There's something about going into Perkins. It is a really hard place to win. My formula has this game. I got Sulphur a 2.5-point favorite going into Perkins, and I got Perkins winning the game. Take that, Sulphur.
At least Perkins has a new field, and they don't have that old end zone that goes up 3 or 4 yards. I mean, if you got a 6'4" guy that's being covered by a 6'1" guy, he's already it's got an 8-inch advantage in that back end zone.
Yeah, I remember that the slanted end zone. Yeah, they do have a new field, but it's still quite an atmosphere there on Friday nights in Perkins. It's the biggest thing going in Perkins.
When I was at
Tyrone.
Sorry to interrupt.
Well, go ahead,
Sorry
Coach.
about that. When I was at Perkins, I got to tell a couple stories. That Wes Welker came to town. He was decent. I also saw Albert Craig and Donovan Woods that year with Millwood. So there was some major talent played on that crooked field down there in the valley or the ditch, whatever you want to call it. So
it's too bad you can't go to the Steer Inn for a victory dinner anymore.
I think Millwood might have ate at the Steer Inn before they come down and I told our team at halftime we was going to make the USA Today because it was like 55-0, and I didn't know if they was going to roll up 100 on us or not. But I can't remember the coach's name. One of y'all say it, I'll remember it then. But for Millwood, but he was a class act. They pulled off of us, but man, oh man, were they loaded.
Hey, Jake, real quick,
It would have been maybe Gary Willis. I don't know at the time.
I think it was Willis. I think it was. Yeah.
For a long time, and Leotis Robinson, of course, before that.
I don't think it was Leotis. I would remember that. I think it was. He said, yeah.
Hey, Jake, I want to go back real quick because I didn't catch the show that first week, but I was wondering, what was your pick on the Washington Sulphur game?
I had Washington, I think a 14.5-point favorite or a 17.5-point favorite or something. So I had Washington, and I think in my pick, I had Washington, pulling away. So, I've disrespected Sulphur every week every week so far. So I figure I'll just stay with it. But it's this is not out of, I just have a feeling about Perkins. There's something about that, about going to Perkins on a Friday night and Sulphur, it's going to be a great game, but I think Perkins is going to pull the upset.
Jacob will not be welcome at the Artesian Hotel anytime soon.
The smallest casino in the world. It's literally it's like 2 hotel rooms, just a bunch of slot machines, 1 blackjack table.
Well, Coach Harmon, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate you coming on and talking a lot of these 8-man games and some of the other games as well. Thanks for joining us. You have a standing invitation to come back and join the panel anytime. So again,
thanks for having me. I enjoyed it. I really did.
Tom, looking forward to your. Go ahead, Tom.
I'll say real quick because I did a lot of Garber games when you were coaching there, and boy, I tell you what, I really enjoyed working with you, and you were great to work with, and made sure I had everything I needed. So made me a better broadcaster. So I appreciate that.
You come back, we'll give you more than cookies if that's all Covington's giving you. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, the first place I'd ever seen a walking taco was in Garber at the concession stand. So
there you go.
Well, thank you for joining us tonight on the Skordle Pater Pick'em Show, sponsored by Maples, Nix, and Diesselhorst Law Firm. Be sure to tune in to all of our network games on Skordle.tv so you can watch those games for free. We'll be back next week with new guests and more great games. We'll see you then.